Well, it is June already, June 2022. And I say that because I don't know when you're listening to this, but we have a bunch of beautiful women here tonight that have all joined us. We have a very special guest this month speaking to us. I get to share a little bit how this guest has been instrumental in my journey and my walk of faith. And so it's been a blessing for me. She's one of my sheroes of the faith. So I appreciate it. She said, yes, y'all. She said, yes. I asked and she said, yes. I was so excited. But just a quick, if you at the end, what I am going to do is, so everyone who stays to the end that's watching live, I'm going to actually do a drawing, and you can pick which one of this special guest books that you would like, and I will send it to you. So I want you guys to be able to choose it, and I'm going to drop ship it from Amazon. Not going to lie, it's just going to come straight to them. So I'm sorry if there's not a special note. I'm going to send it straight to you, but I want you to know, I want you to be able to pick a book because I know you're going to want one when we're done. And I know I'm going to be, even before I say who it is yet, there's a special hello from Tyler Rosenquist to our special guest tonight. She said to tell you hello. She wished she would have been here. She was going to jump in, but she had some family errands. And one other announcement is for those of you who are interested, would you go, Dr. Gina Dye still have chairs open and for the Tabernacle Conference they're doing in Oklahoma City. It's July 12th and 13th. It's that weekend. Someone pop it in the comments or something if you happen to know when it is. I'll be there, but it's July. It's the second weekend, I believe, in July. So it's going to be great. I believe it's $50 for a couple, and they have free childcare available to you, which is kind of nice for a conference. Childcare is actually available, which is very cool. Well, I'm going to jump in, and I am going to read because I don't want to get this wrong. So Lois Tverberg, am I saying it right? I practice. Pretty good. You're going to fix it. Has been teaching and writing about the Jewish background of Christianity for the past 20 years. Her passion is to translate the Bible's ancient setting into fresh insights that deepen and strengthen Christian faith. Lois grew up with plenty of Sunday school knowledge, but it wasn't until after she had earned a PhD in biology and was teaching as a college professor that her fascination for the Bible's original Jewish setting was ignited. She has since studied several times in Israel, taking courses in biblical Hebrew, Koine Greek, and in the physical and cultural context of the Bible. In 2009, Lois partnered with Anne Spangler to write the best-selling Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus, and Zondervan published that for her. Together, they discovered how restoring Jesus is his first-century Jewish reality sheds light on his life and his ministry. Later, Lois followed with Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus, also with Zondervan, which challenged leaders to follow their rabbi more closely by hearing his words in light of Jewish thought. In her latest book, Reading the Bible with Rabbi Jesus, which is by Baker, Lois equips readers to encounter the scriptures more like first-century disciples. The book looks at the big picture ideas that are lost on modern Westerners, helping us bridge the cultural divide that separates us from Jesus's original Middle Eastern context. Lois brings to her writing a surprising set of tools, you'll see why, from her training as a scientist. She received her BA in physics and her PhD in molecular physiology. She has published several scientific papers and holds a patent from her PhD research. For several years, she taught biology at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. In 2001, she co-founded Engedi Resource Center, great site, which we'll make sure this all goes in our links, and educational ministry with a goal of deepening Christian understanding of the Bible in its context. There, she published her first book, Listening to the Language of the Bible, a devotional guide to Hebrew words and ideas. Lois currently writes from her home in Holland, Michigan. Along with writing, she speaks churches, conferences, retreats here with us. Her current news and articles are available on her website, ourrabbijesus.com. Welcome, Lois. What a blessing that you're here. I'm thrilled.
Thank you. Truly.
Welcome. Again, you said yes. Thank you for saying yes to us. And we're just blessed to have you. I know I've had so many messages from me saying, how did you get her? How did she say yes? I said, I just asked. And she was so gracious. I have a couple of questions before we kind of get started in anything you want to share with us tonight. But I want you to kind of share with us your journey of finding out or learning what changed you. I mean, it's kind of, how do you reconcile? Well, that's another question. Going from your journey from mainstream Christianity to then going into studying about the Hebraic perspective.
Hmm.
How did that happen?
How did that happen? How can it be? Surprise, surprise. Um, well, you already heard half of my talk. She gave it because she read the whole deal on my background. That's good, but that's okay. Um, well, let's see. I would have to say that I still am a part of mainstream Christianity.
Right, right.
And I want to make that specifically clear is that I feel very strongly that I'm part of a bigger whole of loving people who want to understand.
Yes. I guess
My
I'll clarify my question. How
yeah
did you go from just, being
yeah
someone who showed up and maybe teaching Sunday school and then all of a
yeah
sudden being interested in the Hebraic
yeah, you
perspective?
betcha. Where did I get that interest? Where did I
Yeah.
get this passion? You betcha. Well, you can tell, maybe you could figure out from all of those things that I've been doing in my past is that I grew up, I'm kind of a nerd. I'm kind of a, I like to study, a nerdette. That's what I say. So my nerdette tendencies sent me to school. I grew up in a family who loved the Lord and loved to learn. And just like here, you see all my little books in the background here, my family's walls are covered in books. And, they were your Christian, your Chuck Swindoll's and your Billy Graham and Chuck Swindoll and all these good dudes. And my mom, heavily involved in Bible study. She was she had a reputation among there was a guy who was a Jehovah's Witness, who was or his family was, and he was a friend of my brother's, and he said, the Jehovah's Witness have a big axe over your house because your mother talks them out. She sits down and talks to everybody. And so she's like passionate. And my grandparents were missionaries. That's on my dad's side. My grandparents were missionaries in Madagascar, and that's that little island off of Africa. And so my dad grew up with a lemur. He had a couple pet lemurs that would greet him when he got home. You guys know what lemurs are from TV shows or whatever. And so my family quite passionate about Jesus and the Bible. Honestly, we're all, I think, or as our culture is changing, we're dealing with the struggles that everybody is. I grew up in a Lutheran church. Lutherans are big on grace. We're saved by grace. Grace, grace, grace. Saved by grace. Free from the law. Free from the law. and in a way that it kind of made this weird problem in my mind. Why is it that we love Jesus so much and he's so loving, but his father, he's so angry and these laws are so horrible. Oh, and I'm so glad to be free of him. And that's the whole point is that, and there's something's going wrong. And so I would say, as you go through your, we do confirmation classes. That's what kids do. And in my confirmation classes, I remember we were reading the 10 Commandments, and you're reading about you shall have no other gods, or love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. And I sat there going, I don't even like God. I don't know how I'm supposed to love God.
That's good.
So you can hear all these little disconnects. Like, there's a problem here. I don't understand. I don't quite get this. It's a frustration. And so, as much as you're passionate and you get some wonderful, wonderful things, there's questions. And then there are other things going on, like my, well, maybe I won't go into it for sake of time. I've given another talk about how, okay. I went to college at a Lutheran college, and the scholars the professors I had were on the liberal side, and some of them were saying things, Jesus probably didn't actually say that he was the Messiah. He's really not the Son of God. He's just a wise guy. And so that really shook my faith. And there are these forces from the outside. It's not just a matter of what I heard in my church, but other things that are going on that are real problems and what's going on. And so I've given this is another talk for a different time. I'll tell you about how actually it was when I started learning about Jesus's Jewish context that it actually answered a whole bunch of the scholarly objections to Jesus saying, didn't really actually say he was Messiah. It's when you actually read him in his Jewish context that you see the power of his claims. And so that's a whole different issue, but that's one of the problems that I was having. And so that's that was my college days. I was praying about what am I going to do. And my family was a bunch of nerds. My dad, my grandpa was a missionary, but my dad, he decided he'd serve the Lord by being a doctor. And so he was a family doctor and he delivered babies and so we all like science. And so I took science and I learned to be a biologist. Actually, I was a physics major. I'm a nerd. I'm sorry. Okay, get to the point. So, so I got my PhD in biology, and you learn how to do research. You learn how to dig through heavy duty literature. And then I moved to Michigan, Holland, Michigan, where I still live. And I was at choosing my next church, and there was going to be a seminar there by, his name is Ray Vanderlaan. Okay, here's my first interactive question. How many of you know who Ray is? Ray Vanderlaan. Raise your hand. Some of you never heard of this guy. A few of you like, yep.
A lot of our Bema podcasters will know Ray because he's really recommends going through his video series.
Yeah.
Love him. Good. Yeah. Erica says she loves RVL.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, his RVL. Everybody knows RVL in town. He teaches at the local high school. He was teaching a 30-week-long series at this church that I was trying to decide whether I was going to join. And so I signed up, and it just blew my hair back from the very first day. And that was when it was, I guess you're asking, when did I discover this? And when did I start asking questions? And so things like, you mean that Jesus actually makes much more sense when you read him in his Jewish context? That he wasn't just rebelling and squelching all of those evil Jews that were rejected everything he said, and that maybe some things he said actually make more sense in that context than others? Oh no! Or Jesus just, he overflows with references to his scriptures, which is the Old Testament. Our Hebrew Bible, that part of the scriptures, he actually expects his disciples to be very knowledgeable. Well, I had hardly touched that part. And like, oh my, that really kind of set me on I better start learning. Actually, at first I said, that's absolutely impossible. Because that's impossible. That's just, I don't know where this Ray Vanderlaan guy is getting this. It turns out the same reaction I had. Actually, there's a scholar, I should say that some people are like, what's going on? The whole scholarly world is actually going through the same discussions that some of the lay people are going on. This is a very new area of interest, even to scholars of the Bible. And so there were New Testament professors sitting around, and a guy gave, a very well-known guy gave a talk where he said, I think Paul knew his scriptures by heart. And the New Testament professors are like, absolutely not. Totally impossible. That's impossible. And then some of there was a few Jewish scholars sitting in the background, and they said, yeah, he probably did. And what else do you think he knew? because that's really it's been traditional and standard practice is to know the scriptures by heart. Or, maybe what I would say is not that you just recite whole long books, but that you're intimately familiar. When somebody starts rattling off this line, you know where it comes from, you know where it's about. And you just, because that really was convicting. So that's where I got started. And so you can imagine that's why I got passionate. And as I was studying and teaching biology on the side, I started teaching at my church. I started reading scholarly material, more books on it. So I honestly poured my energies into learning what I could and then teaching others in my own church. As I was teaching at school, so I kind of knew how to teach, and not everybody does, but that was how I started out. If you're wondering, where did I start? But then, excuse me, a businessman and I started this Engedi Resource Center, which we realized that there are lots of people, the whole church needed to know about their Jewish roots, of course, right? So we set up, we held seminars for pastors in town. We had Israel trips. We did, and this was 20 years ago when this newfangled thing called the internet and web and email was kind of like radically new. And so we started this new website thing, and I started writing emails and articles for my church and then for everybody on my email list. So that was how I got started on this. And so that's, if you're wondering, how did I get into it? That's how I did. And I started taking Hebrew and Greek. I went to Israel, studied in Israel some. So that's my background.
One of the things that I appreciate is the scholarly look. When I shared in the very beginning that you were one of my introductions into just understanding, being raised in the church my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
My question, I wrote a note, like, how was this new? You're talking, this is a new scholarly, like scholars as well as pastors are asking these questions now. And I remember when I first started asking the questions, and I remember reading your book, and I was thinking, the first book I read was Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus. And I was like, this, what? And like, there was like I'm going to call it an awakening, for lack of a better term, to a different way to look at things, because, and a lot of the women I know that are here, one of the things that was, we were not in a situation, or we were not encouraged to ask questions. You just received what was being told to you, and you didn't. If you ask questions, you may or may not have been kicked out of a church if you ask a question. And so because you just don't do that, you don't question. That's just how it is. So I love hearing that it is a thing that's, it's a scholarly debate, or not a debate, but it's open now, and you're seeing more and more ministers in Christian churches that are saying, we want to, what is this? Let's know, because if the word become flesh, what word was it?
There you go.
Because there was no New Testament. So what word was it, right?
That's right. Yes, exactly. So yes, yeah, I have to say that my area was especially blessed because of this fellow Ray Vanderlaan, who's led a lot of, he's taken a lot of trips to Israel. He's done a lot of seminars in churches. And so the churches in my area have been very interested, and the pastors are fascinated. And nobody drops out of their church, and nobody gets crabby about it. They're like, hey, let's talk about Hebrew words this weekend. Hey, let's talk about Yom Kippur or whatever. And so so the Engedi Resource Center, for a while, we were very, I guess I call it local. We would source the pastors to be doing more of this, because they need, like if you're going to do something about culture stuff, you have to, well, where do I go for that? I don't know.
And what's vetted? Because I don't know if can I trust it, right?
Well, yeah, vetting is a big deal. If you haven't noticed it, there are some things that are really just incredibly useful and helpful, and some things that are not. They were invented yesterday by a group who wanted to sell books. And they just decided that if we came up with a magical way of finding codes in the Bible and we used Hebrew words to do it, that people will buy your books. And so you really have to be a little careful about what you read. I know that I try not. I'm not trying not to step on toes, but
no, you did a great job with that, because what we have to realize, and that was again what I appreciated, is the scholarly aspect that I know that there's a certain level of evidence-based practice that goes into play when you have your educational background, because like you said, I learned how to do the research, so how to. One of the things we do in doctorate programs is learn how to actually peer review papers. So is this true? Fact check. Is this truth? And this happens. So how to go and dig in and find those things out. So
the very fact that a person is willing to have their discussion picked on or to interact with others shows that they have done the homework. Whereas, it's I can't say there's anything. I mean, the church has been commissioned to preach the word, and so the pastor is given authority to preach the word. And the way it's disseminated, there isn't back arguing between the pastor and others. It's the pastor is the spokesman of God, and you better just listen to him. Hello. And that's the way the church should function in some ways, but there is the academy, and that area is where people ask questions, and even pastors, they grow up in the academy, but then they have been given authority to speak, and they do the best they can. One thing I'll tell you about that. Yeah. So
it is. I like that. They do the best they can with what they have. And I'm excited to hear about the interest. And I have seen that in my own case, as I've spoken with pastors here, even in Northwest Arkansas, multiple pastors who are excited. They're saying, would you come in and share with us about the festivals and the feasts? We want to know more about those things, because it's kind of like, if Jesus did it, we want to do it, or we want to at least know about it. And so it's kind of fun that there's an interest that's happening.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah, exactly. It's deepening and enriching. As long as you're careful. Right. But I have to say that I actually have a little bit of experience back in my own family life that formed why I do the things that I do. And that's, passionate parents love the Lord and everything. But, and my grandma, on my mom's side, my family, farmers in Wisconsin, and part of our family, my uncle and some cousins had a building business or whatever. But, there was my uncle's family got interested in Seventh-day Adventism, which is very strong on, observing Sabbath. And I get the whole beauty and gorgeousness of the biblical Sabbath and all of those things, but what has happened is that it got to be a severe conflict where my uncle was saying, my grandma she couldn't drive and she needed to go to church, and my uncle was like, no, it's pagan. And so it ripped, and then, then the one said, well, we can't, our building business, we can't work on Saturday. And the other was, well, we're not working on Sunday. So just a big tear. And I know how divisive and how bad it can be when you grab onto one thing and you kind of lose track of Christ. And the fact that we are trying to be conformed to his image and to become disciples who walk and talk and act and love others like he did. And so there's a reason why when you what I will often say in my materials, people are like, why do you say Jesus and not Yeshua? And it's because it's, I realize that those issues, small issues of pronunciation of words, are so you people can get so passionate about small details that they kind of lose the forest for the trees. And so I deliberately use language that makes sense to people who don't know much, instead of moving over into a language that is becomes its own lingo, that it's beautiful to the people who speak it, but it's strange and foreign, and it kind of pushes puts a wedge between you and all of the people that you used to love Jesus together with, because you've got that one little lingo now and you're shifting farther away. And it can, so it's very deliberate. I find it really important that we have to be, my motto is be a bridge, not an island. If you were supposed to go out in the world and make disciples of all nations, and it means that as we learn things that help us grow to be better disciples and more in love with Christ, that we have to be able to transmit those to others. And we don't transmit those to others if we drop out and say, I'm in my own little group and we speak a lingo that nobody else gets.
We're really careful. That's one of the things here in the Rita Cafe, because we have a lot of women here that are pursuing Torah in their lifestyle and the things that they do, or they consider, we have someone who are converted. I know there's a couple girls who are fully converted to Judaism. We have ladies of different walks, and we're really careful because we have women of all different stages of wherever they're at in their faith, or maybe their study, or what their own personal revelation is. And I know that I know Tyler uses the same verb. We'll say, don't be a Torah terrorist. We want to be very clear that, as even in my own family, or some of us have divided families in their homes. And I appreciate what you're saying about having a rip, because we have some women in here that maybe they are wanting to pursue things, and they're wanting to be, they're observing a Sabbath and their husband's doing it a different way. And we we really encourage everyone to just, love. The bottom line is we love it. I just read one of your articles about that, about we really have to go to that place of that commandment, is that we love. And are we being loving in the process? Because neither one of them is going to listen to the other if we're yelling and screaming and being, hateful about it. So we just need to be loving. And like I said, a lot of the ladies that are in here are struggling with some of those areas, maybe in their home or their families.
It's hard.
And I know this particular group, we talk about things that are pursuing more things that maybe Jesus did, and we interchangeably will say Jesus and Yeshua for those reasons.
Right. Yeah.
So I was curious, in one of you, I'd written another question I wanted to ask you about, is in your studies as you began, I don't know if is there one thing, or maybe one or two things that was a paradigm shift for you, or that you had believed it to be one way, and then you studied it and realized that has not even what it says. Now I know, like when I just read your article about fulfilling the law and understanding, like, wow, that's, that was fun. I love the way that you put that. But was there a thing that was a paradigm shift for you, or that was a surprise?
Oh golly, they all.
I know there's a lot.
Like everything. I'm thinking.
That's on the spot, guys. I'm sorry. I didn't censor that question.
I'm thinking. I have to say, people, they like, which one of your books is your favorite? It's like, which one of your children is your favorite? Which I can tell you a couple things that that changed, that rewired my neurons. I guess that's kind of a way that you could say, is that it changed my whole attitude about life. And they, let's see. I don't know how much time we have. Remind me.
About a half an hour. You have about a half an hour. Yeah,
okay. Well, okay. I mean, if some of you have read my Sitting at the Feet book, I have a chapter about blessing the Lord at all times. And this is a beautiful prayer habit of these little tiny prayers. You know how Jesus, he blesses before they have the bread and the fish, and we think he's blessing the fish. He's making it holy. No, and we write about, no, actually, there's this practice of little short prayers of praising God at in all circumstances, like Paul says, and they are just like the very first thing in the morning is, "Blessed is he who gives wisdom to the rooster to tell day from night." And it's like, thank you, God, for my clock radio. And then you go all the way. You're eating an orange, and you open it, and you smell it, and you go, blessed is he who gives fragrance to fruits. It's like you seize hold of opportunities to praise God at all times, and you're aiming to do it 100 times a day. And so I wrote a chapter on that. That makes you into, it really gives you a sense of the presence of God and a sense of praise and thankfulness. That's a huge thing. I mean, that's the kind of thing that's just deeply enriching. And I would say everybody ought to learn that. Read that. Get as Jewish as you want. If you want to read those are really good. And so that's one thing. I'll give you my other, there's a chapter I wrote in my book called Walking in the Dust that has absolutely flipped my, it's the one, it's called Taking My Thumb Off the Scale. And it's about Jesus' words about do not judge. And which, to all Christians are like, do not judge. You mean we just declare everything fine? We just hug everybody? Because sin, we just ignore the sin. That's what he really means, right? Is that what Jesus really means? Love your enemies. I don't know. We kind of just give up on that. And so, but you have to hear the conversation going on around him. And the conversation itself is so rich. And they're asking, and there's a rabbi who says, well, they're discussing, how you guys are talking about pursuing Torah? Well, the scriptures don't actually say that. They say pursue justice. It says justice shall you pursue. And that's what we should be. Righteousness, blessed are those who are persecuted, actually because they pursue, or those who pursue, the same word. Oh, you got to read my article about that. Pursuing righteousness is what we should be doing. But he said, if you want, so this is a rabbinic spin on how do we judge people towards righteousness. Well, what you do is you judge them you judge them with the pan weighted towards righteousness. Give them the benefit of the doubt. And you say, that's nice. Okay, but now we got to tell you a parable, rabbinic parable. There once was a man he's a farm owner, and he hired a man to help him on his farm. And the man who worked for the farm worker, he worked for 3 years, and finally said, I need to go home and see my family. And can I get my pay to go with me to go bring it back to my family? And the farm owner, he says, I have no money to give you. And the farm hand says, well, could I just have some sheep that I was taking care of? And the farm owner says, I have no animals I can give you. And there's something else. I can't remember what else he asked for. He's like, can I have some crops? No, I can't give you any of those. And so the farmhand goes home with nothing. 3 days later, the farmer arrives at his door with a cart overladen with gifts. And everything, all his back pay plus tons more stuff. And the farmer says to the farmhand, when I said to you I had no money to give you, what did you think? He said, I thought you might have spent all your cash on a business deal. And he says, well, when I said that I had no, let's see, when I don't have any crops to give you, what did you think? I thought your land might have been leased to others. When I said that I had no animals to give you, what did you think? I thought you had devoted them to the temple to give to God. And that farmer says, it was just this way. My son would not study the Torah. And I was so angry, I vowed everything to the temple. And so I couldn't give anything to you. But I was absolved of my vow and forgiven. So then now I can pay you all your back pay. And just as you have judged me favorably, I get all choked up. May God judge you favorably. And it talks, and you can see he's making you could almost say excuses for initially things that seem unkind. And it doesn't sound, it can be earth-shattering when and here, this is how I use it even when I think about Jewish roots, or why did he preach that? That was so lame. Why didn't he tell that great story about such and such? If you judge the way kind of your initial is, man, why are he's keeping it from us. Somehow he studied it in seminary, and then some professor says, now never tell anybody this. Tell them the wrong thing, but don't let them know the cool, interesting insight that you already know, but you're not going to tell them. Do you think that's what happened? Do you think that all the people behind you that you say are lying to you are actually lying to you? No, they themselves would be blessed greatly by understanding these things. And so that's the kind of thing, is that like shifts your brain upside down, is maybe if I quit accusing everybody, maybe I can assume the best, and maybe we just didn't know, and I need to go out and share and love people for it. So there you go. That's the answer. What thing flipped your brain up? And that would be that.
That is so great, because there's a lot of times when I've talked to someone, exactly what you said. They'll say, why didn't my pastor tell me these things?
Mm-hmm.
And why didn't I? And I know there was a season when I was thinking, why didn't I know this? Like, I feel like, why wasn't this taught in seminary? Why wasn't this taught in Bible college? I didn't go to seminary, but in Bible college, why didn't this happen here? And it wasn't taught. It was because they didn't know. This is, sometimes things are just, there's dispensations, right? There could be dispensations of knowledge.
People, you gotta realize another thing that we don't kind of know some of our history, and it takes a while to, it's really been since the Holocaust that Christians and Jews have even been able to speak to each other. When Christians have said, oh, wow, this is so horrifying. We can't ever, this was massive, this horrible crime that we committed against the Jews. And there was anti-Semitism in the church, and it was terrible. And there really was it has been terrible. And so the church has, God says, to Abraham, those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. And in the same way, when Christians have cursed Israel and the Jewish people, they've been cursed with an incredible ignorance of what the Bible says. Ouch. That's a pretty passionate statement, but there's this massive hole of misunderstanding, and then the church over history came up with little things like, Jesus was against everything Jewish, and he came to bring it to an end. And the Old Testament is just about that bad God that Jesus came to. We come up with little stories in order
Right.
to justify our.
We have one of our teachers, she said, isn't it funny how we thought this, what you said, that like, oh, it was the mean dad God, and
Bad dad.
nice Uncle Jesus came to help us. So and I had a hard time because my dad was a Marine, and he was tough, and he was
Yeah,
hard, and it was
yeah,
hard for me to understand that I couldn't have this path to this amazing loving God, because we're
yeah,
thinking about the one that curses from 7 generations, but forget
yeah,
the one that blesses to
yeah,
1,000,
yeah.
who, we
Okay,
forget because we
right,
focused on that.
right.
Right.
Honestly, no, yeah, and I feel very honest. If anything, now I see Jesus as tough. When I read his words, he's tough. And then
Yeah.
I honestly like his father better in the Old Testament because I'm used to reading him and I like him. He
And
just
it's
talks
fun
like
when you
this.
learn that, when you love that Hebraic perspective. And I think one of the things that most of the women in here have found is that as they begin to understand the Hebraic perspective of the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and they're seeing the ties back and forth between things, and that as one of the apostles or disciples were sharing, they can see where it was linking to something in the Old Testament and the Hebrew
Yeah,
Bible. They're
that's right.
seeing that. And then it's alive. It's become, there's a dimension. It doesn't
That's
make
right.
any more saved. It's none of this
No.
is salvation
Yeah,
issues,
yeah.
but it's a thing that, oh wow, I have a dimensional understanding that I didn't
Amen.
have before. And it's
Amen.
powerful. And where I thought these
Amen.
things conflicted each other, now
Yeah.
all of a sudden they come together
Mm-hmm.
beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
They don't contradict.
Right.
They
That's
beautifully
right.
join together. And it's
Mm-hmm.
genius.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Wow. Yeah. It's wonderful. Deeply enriching and wonderful.
Notice the nerd in both of us. Yeah.
It makes you.
It's the fun things to learn. So if we have someone who's brand new, they're just kind of looking for that bridge, and they're just learning, they're kind of hungry, I want to know more about this Hebraic perspective, which one of your books would you say they should start with?
Oh golly. Well, it depends on what kind of nerd you are. Um, well, one thing is that people, they ask me, which order are you supposed to read them in? And it was a little task, but I wrote them so that you can pick up any single book and it is independent. You can pick up any one of them. You read it there, it's okay. Don't worry. They're supposed to be, you can read them any order. Okay. But hey, conveniently, I have some sitting right here to show you.
Conveniently, how convenient.
Good,
While you pull those up, I have to read this, that Linda Millett, she says, I met Jesus in the Gospels, the Holy Spirit in the epistles, but I met the Father in the Torah.
Oh, that's nice. Okay,
That was
that's
nice.
There
Okay,
you go.
books, bring them on, sister. Bring them.
Okay, okay, hang on. I just discovered the chat part, and I hadn't even been looking at the chat part. Okay, okay. The first book I ever wrote was called "Listening to the Language of the Bible," hearing it through Jesus' ears, and I worked. This was self-published through my little ministry. A lot of people, they know of my big books through the major publishers, but they don't know about this one. And so this one has lots of little finite ahas. Oops. Okay, here, move it a little farther. So it will be like front and back of one page, and people are like, oh, that's not hard. It's front and back of one page. And, well, I can cram a lot. And so, but a lot of them are things that, like dam, the imagery of blood. What does blood mean? Why do they keep talking about blood? Blood. The blood of Abel cries out against you, or fruit. The fruit, and all these little images and Hebrew words and ideas. What? I don't get it. And so I wrote this one. This is people. I have everybody between college professors. There's one Old Testament professor. He made 1,000 students buy it, and homeschool moms who would read it with their kids. So you got college professors and homeschool moms reading these things, and then people kept saying, boy, could you write a Bible study so we could study these Hebraic concepts in your Bible? And so that was my first little thing. That was that. So if you want to understand little Hebraic ideas, that was my first thing. So this one is the one that I did with Ann Spangler. And Ann she has been writing for major publishers, and she had read this book, my listening book, and she says, "This really, people really like this, Lois, but you write kind of like a professor. Can you warm it up with a little more,
Little woo. We need a little woo woo.
little woo?" Said, with your meat and potatoes, put some good vegetables in there, And so
A little cheesecake.
cheesecake, yeah, it's got it. And so we wrote "Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus," and this is about the Jewish world around Jesus, rabbis and disciples, and Passover and the feasts and Torah. What do you mean that Jesus wasn't abolishing the Torah? What? That was a hard chapter to write. I felt like my Lutheran grandpa was flipping over in his grave.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of his converts in Madagascar are
pretty much like, sorry. So
right. That was my first book, by the way, and it was life-changing. Just like, wow, I knew it. I knew there was something else.
So okay, and sorry, now you've got me going on my spiel, and then
You're good. Keep going.
Okay. Well, the next one I wrote, "Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus." This one just is me, without Anne, just me, because I kind of chilled out and learned to write on my own. Well, I've done others, but this one honestly is one that I really like to hand to people, especially if they're very Jewish. When I ask, I say I'm writing to Christians about Judaism. I'm not trying to write I'm not Jewish. I'm just trying, and so, but yet, this one is about the Jewish words of Jesus and how that's shocking. What? Some of the things he said makes more sense in Judaism than in Christianity. And so I talk about the Shema. How many of you guys all know the Shema?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, yeah, most of us should. Most of us probably recite it daily, but yeah, we do know it. We just, it's a part of our life, but and I love that you said that, because you have there's idioms. Like, what is that?
Yeah, right.
Like, I share a story often about my mother would say, I think I might have shared when we talked one day about my mom would say when company came, "Oh, we have to put on the dog." And so I knew that meant to put out the good silverware, put the dishes out, to put the old towels away, put the knife. But if someone else never heard that before, they would have no idea what that meant. They would think we were crazy and we're barbecuing our dog.
Yeah.
But the same thing goes if you don't understand a Hebrew idiom, you don't understand that this meant something different.
That's right.
Because we don't live there. Imagine now our kids say, "Oh, that's bad, dude. That's bad."
Yeah.
Well, that bad means good. And so we get confused if we read that like in 100 years, right?
That's right. That's right. No, that's totally this. But this one is the most, I'd say, practical in terms of how does Jesus's Jewishness affect us. And this one's like the one where I talk about judging favorably and how to have a kosher mouth. And there's this wonderful Jewish wisdom about what not to say. And how to be, people, when Christians get into their roots, their Jewish roots, they're really into kosher food, but Jesus is really more into kosher speaking. And honestly, the Jewish people, when they, at Yom Kippur, there's this long litany of sins that the whole congregation reads it off as if they've committed every one of them. They as a community are trying to repent of everything. As a community, we're so sorry, but there's a big chunk of them that are things about the gossip that our lips has said, and the lashon hara, the negative, the unkind speech that we have made, and the blah, 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 because it's such a powerful, important thing. So that's it. Sorry, that getting a little bit too much on that. And then my most recent Reading the Bible with Rabbi Jesus. And that's more about, I said, things, big picture, cultural background differences that really make it hard for us to understand our Bibles. They thought in terms of family and people, and we think in terms of me. And so we read our Bible so differently. It's trying to say one thing and we're trying to find the whole opposite thing. So
right, we're not looking at they were talking about generations,
Yeah.
working at generations. Remember,
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
Abraham built wells he never would drink from because they
Oh, yeah.
weren't for
That's right.
him. They were
Yeah.
generational, and we are
Yeah.
not thinking generational or community minded.
No.
We're
Right.
very, very, very few of us are even thinking like, how is this going to affect my children? We're like you
Yeah.
said, how is this affecting me and right now? And can I drive through and buy it? That's
Yeah.
just all I need to know because I'm
That's
not
right.
worried about later.
That's right.
But
And
can I
that's
do it now?
exactly right. No, that's right. And that honestly, there's, yeah, exactly. And I'm a little, um, I have more, what can I say, years in ministry and experiences than I think. So I'm curious, Charlie, how many years have you been studying?
Studying, I've been studying the word since I was 15 and I'm
Yeah.
54.
Okay.
So
Okay.
then studying from a Hebraic perspective,
Yeah.
about 20 years.
20 years. Okay. I'm 54 also.
Yay.
Oh, we're going
Yay.
to.
Yes.
Okay.
Class of 86. No.
Yeah, I was 85. Oh, isn't that fun?
Yay.
So, um, well, the thing that that I see happening is there are controversies and difficulties that go around, and then people address them and say this is wrong and we got to not do this, and then everybody figures it out, and then 10 years later people talk about the same, like, uh-oh, I thought we learned this already. um,
Right. Right.
and this and um, I'm a little, I'm concerned about, because I know that one that's been very common recently that I guess I feel like the Lord's telling me how to bring up is the kind of the one law thing. He gave one law to the there shall be one law among you, to the Jews and the Ger. Um, yeah, no, that and there the deal is there was a I don't know how many of you folks have heard that one. I think that gets tossed around a lot now. Well, that was kind of come up, that was invented. I can tell you who I don't know if it's, there was one group that was figured that one out and was preaching. It's one law for Jews and Greeks, or I mean, Gentiles. It's one law, until one of wonderful Dwight Pryor. Do you know Dwight Pryor?
I don't know him
No.
personally, no.
Oh, that's not. I got to recommend really good ministries. Um, the Center for Judaic Christian Studies, Dwight Pryor, has been just a wonderful. And so, if people want to learn more, you don't have to. I'm just not trying to sell my stuff. There's some great things out there, but the folks that were very strong, that had kind of invented this, Dwight sat down with them and said, you know that the New Testament does not back this up. You can't find that this is not. And so they sat down and they looked through what they were saying, and they looked a little harder and they said, there is nowhere that the New Testament is trying to make the Gentiles. And in fact, in Acts 15, it says, no, the Gentiles need to just, if you just stop, let's see, sexual immorality, idolatry, murder, and strangling, which scholars think is probably about, my one scholarly position is that that's actually infanticide. It's abortion, because that was pretty common Roman thing to do, is infanticide. That was
I know that in here we have
yep.
we probably borderline that for this
Yeah,
area, is that in saying many, there's some that are natural born Jews, maybe there's ladies
yeah,
in here who have converted, maybe
yeah,
there's some who are
yeah.
Christian, who are identify as Christians. Like I said, we have ladies all
Yeah,
across the board,
yeah.
and so
Okay.
some are working under that
Yeah,
premise.
yeah,
And I know that as I was trying to reconcile that personally, because as I'm as in a messianic
yeah,
perspective for myself,
yeah,
the way that I reconciled that was that we were told to love your neighbor as yourself, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul,
yeah,
love that my
yeah,
neighbor. And
yeah,
it was wrapped around love. And I know you have an article
yeah.
written about that. It's about,
Right.
it's all rooted in love. And even Paul was like, we learning to, it's all
That's
basically
right.
about us
That's
loving.
right.
And
Yeah,
for me, And I know
Yeah.
there's many ladies in here as well. For
Yeah.
me, the way that I learn to love, sometimes I don't know the step by step because I think I know how
Yeah.
to love, but that's
Yeah.
what the world has taught me. Sometimes I need to go back to the Torah and see what has it taught me. Shockingly, in Torah, tell
Yeah.
me here's ways to love, the way that I treat people well.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I learn it from a Hebraic perspective, not reading
Yeah.
it from a King James perspective, but I'm understanding,
Yeah.
wow, sometimes it means having a kosher mouth.
No,
Sometimes
you're
the
right.
way I need to love is taking that pause,
Yeah.
not
Right.
speaking hate to someone. And I have to
Yeah.
walk through Torah to learn the steps that I don't necessarily, there's no way I'm going to keep them all. So that's why I will jokingly say I'm pursuing, because there's no way I'm ever going to keep them all.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe I'm doing it by loving. I've kept, apparently if I love, I've kept them all supposedly. So
Yeah. Right.
I'll claim
No.
that I'm on that train. So,
Sure. No,
but
I totally agree, and I totally agree, and I totally agree. But yet, but this group that was very strong on telling people, you know, it means that you might want to leave your church behind and do this. When they decided, they realized, they also, it was after years and years of meeting with groups where people had dropped out of their churches and formed groups, and they noticed that the groups would split and the children of the people would leave church entirely. When parents leave churches, their children give up on God entirely. Because, a child is a very harsh judge of what, you're a sinner. And so you have to have a body around you for them to be able to. And so I warn people, don't drop out of churches in order to pursue Torah. I feel very strongly about that, because when you do, your children are gonna walk away from God. That can happen. It's
I
a
know there's
big
ladies in who have
danger.
very, very beautiful congregations that they attend, and
Yeah,
bringing their children in. So I
if
do
you
encourage to
can,
say
that's great.
my daughter
Yeah,
is one of those. Lois, I can say my daughter was,
yeah,
in watching that and unfortunately overhearing conversations that I probably said that wasn't very helpful to
yeah,
her. And then now as a 30-year-old, having to
yeah.
find her way back in, it's a process. But what I
It's so
trust is
hard.
I trust the sovereignty of the Father, and I
Yeah.
Romans 8:28, so it's going to work for both of our good, right? And he's going to bring us all back around. um
No,
I want to
I
ask you
should say,
about
I
your
don't
trip.
want to be, I want to apologize if that was too harsh, but
No, we
because
got
I
you.
can
We
see that is such a hard thing. And I gotta say, I'm not married, never had children. Therefore, I can be perfect when I advise other people.
That's a
Like,
good, I like that.
you're like,
That's good.
yeah, shut up, you. That's what people say, but that's terrible. So what kind of loser am I
No,
that
like
I would be
Mickey
saying
says
such
on
a
here, no,
terrible
not
thing?
harsh at all. And it's a good
It's tough.
explanation. We have to
It's
be really mindful. And as we're bringing
yeah,
in, we don't, I mean, I'll say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater at one point. And I
yeah,
felt to that point where I got so deep in that I got that. And he'll bring
yeah,
balance. That's what I trust him. I trust that he's
yeah,
bringing journey. And I trust the Father in all of you, that he's going to guide you in all truth. And
yeah. Well,
he's going to do
if
that
I
for you.
can I throw out and I hate to. There's a um. Well, what people tend to do is, and it's so much easier now with the internet, and honestly, since COVID and the pandemic, and everybody's at home anyhow, and so it's easy to just, well, you're not part of your church anyhow, and so you kind of use the internet instead of church. Um, um, uh, and yet, um, to it's scary. This area is scary to be in, to do it alone. You need to, and I love the fact, Charlie, I really love the fact that you are surrounding women with, you're giving them a place to interact with each other so that they can have some fellowship. And so when I tell people, so how do we understand our roots? As I say, look, grab some friends from church and read a book together. Okay, one of mine would be okay. I realize that's a little, I hate the fact that that's a sell of my books.
But there are
But
really great. It is a good, and I would recommend the same. It's a good place to start with.
it's
A lot of you that are in churches, bring them to. That's what started. You guys
that's
know that
right.
what
Yes.
started the portion on Facebook, and then ultimately now the Rooted Cafe was 8 women from a Christian church. We sat around and I asked them, "Are you
Yeah.
guys interested in going through a Torah cycle? Are you interested in going through?" We finished a home group with the Bible. Are you guys interested in going through a year with me? And we'll just do
Yeah.
one portion at a time,
Yeah.
along with the prophets, along with the New Testament, and
Yeah.
are you interested in seeing the Hebraic perspective? And they said
Good.
yes. And now,
Good.
like on Facebook, there's 2,000 women who said yes
Yeah.
from all
Good.
different areas, from,
Good.
and then now all of you that are here. And
Yeah.
yes. And but
That's
we
good.
encourage you to find, we have a sister finder. Some of you don't know that. We do have a sister finder. Some of you who maybe aren't in a fellowship or you're not attending a church that's close to you. Some of you are isolated. I know some of you are in, Canada and different places that are so far. Look on the sister finder on our website. You can click, it's one of the tabs, and you can
Mhm.
see and you can add yourself. So you can look, oh, look, there's 5 ladies around me, or we're all within a certain amount. Let's all meet in the middle and
Yeah.
let's
Right.
club,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Yep. That's good.
Let our
But
kids
that's
see us. Let us kids see us in fellowship. Let our kids see us
sweet.
assembling and getting together. A lot of you celebrate feasts, so get together. Let your kids do things together and
But
encourage that.
yet,
I want to hear about kids. I want to hear about. We're going to get going. I want to hear about
but
Africa just briefly. Would you tell the ladies about the orphanage in Africa?
okay. Okay. I have to say, but don't forget your church. Don't drop out of your church in order to do this instead. I love what you're doing, but bring it back to your church. So now that I've said that, now I'll tell you about my Africa connection. So I well, actually, here it's connected to studying the Torah. Back when we started our ministry, when we were doing the Getty Resource Center, we started a Torah study, and we invited an African friend of he had just come from Uganda, and he was just started going to the seminary for a year, and we invite him to come. And at first, you could see he's like, "What crazy people are you?" But then within about 2 weeks, he became the most valuable commentator because Ugandans, Eastern Africans, there's a lot of interconnectedness of the migration and transport and just culturally very similar to Middle Easterners. And so he would be, we're reading this passage about polygamy and whatever, and Titus, that's our friend from it. Oh yeah, that's always the way it's like in polygamous families. We still do that. Levirate marriage, where if the man dies without children and you need another a brother, yeah, well, we still do that. uh, one so anyhow, I have become very good friends with a Ugandan woman who, one of the professors, she is an Old Testament professor. And so, but she has, along with her excellent teaching on the Bible, which fascinates me and greatly enriches my stuff, is very Hebraic. It very much, they're like, oh, this makes way much more sense to us than the Western stuff that we learned when we went to seminary to our Ugandan friends. But then, but I went to see her life and her people, and she also understands her Bible because just like the Israelites were driven away from their land, they were in exile in Babylon. She was, more than once in her life, was driven away from their land. There have been wars in northern Uganda that have killed enormous amounts of people, and so she actually founded a boarding, it's a school, and so there are kids from the area who come, but then there are orphans from her area who live there and are taking classes. You wouldn't call it, it's not quite an orphanage, but it is. And so she understands, taking care of widows and orphans and all those things, because that's what she does. And so I also, we need to love our not just to fill our little noggins with good Torah stuff, but to live it out. And so I'm working on helping her find some funding. So if you're asking why did I go, that's what I did. So
It's really exciting. And I know there was some trouble there because many of you guys don't know in Uganda, I know you had shared with me with their security issues that
mhm.
who knows, who knew you have to pay security to watch your building supplies. And if you don't have security to watch your building supplies, you get building supplies donated and then they all get stolen. And when you
Yeah, that's one. Yes.
and when you have children who are coming to learn and they're sleeping under bridges, but now they're sleeping in your office, the government suddenly cares. They don't care if they're sleeping under a bridge, but they don't want them sleeping in your office. So they're like, no, you have to have a legitimate place for them to sleep.
That's right.
And so now she's forced to have to build a dormitory for these
That's right.
children. And
That's right. That's right. You
love
remember.
bureaucracy.
Yes.
So I will be
Yes.
getting more information for you all. And so
Yeah.
that, I mean, it's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame that
Mhm.
that's our world, right?
Yeah,
Come, Lord Jesus, come.
that's right. And so yes, so so my thing is, my interest is not only in Jewish stuff, although it is rich and rich and rich. But sometimes there are other ways of learning about it, and it's actually from learning from your African friends. They can sometimes teach you about the biblical Bible in its context as well as Jewish stuff does.
Well,
It's
thank you
kind
for
of thing.
walking that out because I think that you going there and those things is actually walking that out because we're
That's
not,
right.
that's actually the whole Shema, right? We're not just hearers. It's an activated word that we're
That's right.
hearers and we're doers.
Yeah,
We're not
that's right.
just listening and waiting, but when we do hear what he's telling us to do, we're actually going and putting feet to it and going into the world. So thank you for that. Thank you
No,
for
that's
being
fine.
that example. Thank you for your work.
Yeah,
Thank you for igniting a fire in me that sometimes people say they don't know, you'll never know the legacy because you don't know all the lives you've touched from one
that's
person. And I
right.
know for you, till you touched my life significantly, and I
Hmm.
pray that I am responsible with that to, that women are ignited to know your word, the word he's given, to understand his heart and how to love one another at such a deep level that they change the world too. So
Well,
your work is generational, so thank you for that.
no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
If it blesses many, if it blessed you, that's great. People, I'm not married. I never had children, but I tell people my books are my babies. And, or in the Shema, it says, talk about these things, teach them to your children. And so it's kind of my way of fulfilling the mitzvah of teaching them to your children. Is if I teach other people's children, it's like teaching them to my children, even though I don't have
Yes,
children. So,
exactly. There's things that you don't even know. You don't even know the mitzvahs because as you're doing that, and then
yeah,
again,
yeah,
it's generational.
yeah, that's
Remember
right.
the old Fabergé, and she told her friends, and she told her friends, she told
That's
her
right.
friends. It just goes out like that, and all
That's
these
right.
children around the world, get to hear because
That's
of
right.
something that you started. So thank you for that.
Sure,
I appreciate you.
sure.
So ladies, I'm going to stop the recording and then you can open up for questions and answers. And some of you have some questions. I know, Kim, you had a question. And I want to thank you officially, and I'll hit the record and stop recording.
Okay.